Okay, welcome. This is a tutorial for Lightroom. This is a tutorial as part of my teaching at the Springfield Art Association. Our photography class is going over Lightroom and workflow. So this is really just a basic overview of the program. For anybody that's never used Lightroom, this will be a good primer to get you started. If you're looking for more advanced Lightroom videos, there's a ton of them out there, and we'll get into some of the more advanced points as these videos progress. But for now, this is just a start as we look at Lightroom here. And if you have a catalog set up already, then you've already got images and stuff loaded. But for those of you that haven't created a catalog, we're just going to start off by doing that. So if we come up to our file, and if you load the software and launch it for the first time, then it's going to kind of walk you through these steps. But because I already have a library created, we're just going to create a new one. So if you look under File, you'll see New Catalog and Open Catalog. So you can open a catalog that you've already created, but in this case, we're going to create a new one. So we'll click that, and it's basically going to ask you where it is that you would like to save. So I'm on my server here, and I've created a folder called SAA Photo. And in that photo, I've got Lightroom, and I've got a Photos folder. And the Photos folder is where I keep all the photos that we're going to load in just a second. So right now, we'll select Lightroom, and we'll give our collection a name. We'll call it SAA Photo. And we'll go ahead and hit Create. Because I already have a library created, it's asking if I want to back it up. I'm just going to skip it this time. Notice how it closed down Lightroom, and now it's relaunching. And you'll see up here that the catalog has now been changed to SAA Photo. Over on the side, you can see that there's like these little arrows. If you click on those, this will expand those modules. Lightroom works in modules, so you'll see up here to the right you have a library module, develop, map, book, slideshow, print, web, etc. We're in the library module right now, and in the library module is where you can import and organize your photos and kind of get your workflow started. So over to the left here, there's several ways that you can start loading photos. The easiest way is right here under folders. We're going to go ahead and click this plus arrow, and you'll see here that it says add folder. We'll go ahead and do that, and we'll go to our server, SAA Photos, and then in our Photos folder, if we open that up, we'll notice that there aren't any folders in there. So we're just going to go ahead and select folder down there. And by doing that, it's going to launch the import module, so we can import all those folders or photos. I'm sorry. So here we go. These are some just sample photos that I pulled and put in that folder, so we can use them to describe what's going on here. Now, in the import window that we have here, there's a couple things going on. We have build previews. I have it set to 1:1. I like doing that. If you have some development settings as you go that you want to put in there, you can actually select this to do. And these are all presets. I'll show you where those are in another video. But you can actually load those in, so it applies these presets to the photos as they're being imported. And then for metadata, you can actually edit your own preset by clicking right here and creating a new one. And I have it set for my Lightroom preset, which basically what that does is it's making sure that my copyright information and all that is getting written into the metadata. And then right here you would put your keywords. So you'll notice that this is basically, since we're just getting started, this is kind of like a photo dump. I've got all sorts of different types of photos in here, and they aren't really organized very well. So if you're approaching Lightroom for the first time and this is kind of how you have things set up, you have all your photos kind of just dumped into one folder. At this point, I probably wouldn't do any keywording. I'd probably go ahead and just import them in and then go back and do the keywording after I got all these images into corresponding folders. But if you were going to do keywording, this is where you would do it. And you know, you want to make sure that with your keywording that you stay consistent. So you know, you put the person's name, put the location. If you're photographing sports, you know, you put football or soccer or whatever. Basically, the goal for keywording is to make it easier for you to cull and organize your collection later on when you have a lot of photos, and you can filter out those keywords and make it a lot easier to find photos that you're looking for. So it's important to kind of have a good keyword strategy up front, and make sure that every time you photograph a football game, you put that football keyword in there. It only works as good as you make it as far as your keywords. So anyways, we've got all these selected. I'm going to go ahead and import those. And you'll notice up here that they're importing the files. And then that kind of gives you a quick thumbnail view of all the files. And now it's building those higher resolution previews. And those higher resolution previews are what we're actually going to use when we get into like the develop module to really see what is happening to these photos. These are all raw photos. They're raw files right off the camera. I have done some work to them previously. You can tell that they're tagged and they're color coded. That just happens to be left over from when I exported them out of my real library and brought them into the sample library. But we can still use these to kind of show you what's going on here. You'll notice in our film strip down here at the bottom that all the photos line up there. And then we also have the small thumbnail preview at the top. If you click on this loop view, you can actually bring those up to a full screen. And that way it makes it real easy for you to see what's going on with your photos. You can zoom in or whatnot. To the left hand side over here, we've got our navigator. We've got our catalog, which shows all of our photos. And now you can see under folders, we have on our server a photos folder that's containing 48 photos of everything we have here. And then underneath that we have collections. Collections are a really great way of kind of putting together collections, honestly, of the photos so you can use them. So like if you were trying to export something for a slideshow or for marketing or whatever, you could put together different collections of those photos. And those are virtual copies. So you aren't actually physically moving photos anywhere. You're just kind of putting them in a folder so you can easily find them later on. So let me kind of show you what's going on here with the photos. On the right hand side, you have a quick develop. So if you do want to make some quick color changes or you know, change some of the basic settings of the image, you can do that right here. Underneath that, you'll see keywords, and you'll notice that these have all been keyword tagged. And then you'll have your keyword list, which this is a list of all the keywords that I have in all the photos so far. But underneath all of that, you have the metadata. And in the metadata, this is where that import tagged all my photos with my copyright and all that information. You can see all the camera information down here. You can see what the file is rated and how it's labeled. Basically just really anything that's written into the XMP file or the sidecar file. So let's talk a little bit about that. If we go up into our Edit tab and we pull down some preferences, we still need to kind of set up Lightroom a little bit. So if we go into preferences, really there's a bunch of tabs up here, but the one that I really want you to pay attention to is external editing. And these are the settings that I think that you should have for your external editing. Now, if this is the first time that you're working in Lightroom, it'll default to a TIFF and Pro Photo and probably 240 DPI. But what I want you to set it up to is a PSD sRGB, which is pretty much a web and print standard, 8-bit at 300 DPI. That's going to give you, really without any hassle, the most compatible file. And then basically what we're telling it is anytime that we export one of our raw files into Photoshop, these are the settings that it's going to export it as. So we've got those settings set, we're good. We're going to go ahead and click OK. Then under Edit, we have our catalog settings. If we click into the catalog settings, there's a couple things that I want you to change. Under metadata, you can see that it defaults with the automatically write changes to XMP. It's not checked. I think you should go ahead and check that. What that's going to do is anytime we make any kind of changes at all, like either through the library or the development module, it's going to go ahead and write that information right into that XMP file. And that way, if you say open the raw file up into like another program, Adobe Camera Raw or Capture One or any other kind of editing program, all that metadata will stay with it. And so that's with your XMP file, and that's called a sidecar file. Here, let me pull up a folder view. If we look into our Photos folder, you can see that next to every one of our photos we have this XMP file, and you'll notice the file name's the same. So anytime you move anything around in Lightroom, these two files stay attached to each other and they'll move together. This is what a lot of people call a sidecar file, and it contains all of those ones and zeros that really make up the photo, and any of the changes that you do will be written into that folder or that file. So let's go back into Lightroom here. So we definitely want to have that checked. Under file handling, standard preview size, I always just click that up to the highest. You know, you can go auto or one of the higher settings. Preview quality, I always go high, and discard after 30 days, that's fine. We'll go ahead and go over here in the general, and basically right here it's asking you when would you like to back up your catalog that you just created. Personally, I like to do it every time Lightroom exits, so that's what we'll click. And then of course when you do exit Lightroom, it does give you the choice. You can skip it if you'd prefer, but usually I go ahead and do a backup. And we'll click OK. Another fun thing that you can do is your identity plate. I mean, this isn't really that important, but up here you can see that it says Lightroom. You know, you can, by clicking this little box here or circle, you can load a logo if you have a studio logo, or you can just use the text here, and we'll just go ahead and change this to SAA photo. You can adjust all the fonts and stuff down here at the bottom, but that looks good. We'll hit OK. One of the reasons why I like to change that, kind of personalizes the space a little bit, but also if you do have clients that are looking over your shoulder, or you know, you happen to show a client some of the images while in Lightroom, it's kind of nice to have your own branding up there. Also, if you do a slideshow presentation, it'll take that branding and add it to your slideshow. So it's kind of a nice little added touch. So here's what we got. We've got our photos. They're loaded. Over here we've got all of our information about that photo. And now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and organize some of this mess that we've created by doing just a big photo dump. Oops. Okay, we're going to go ahead and go back into our grid mode here. And you'll notice when we added our folder of photos, initially we just hit the plus sign there. And we can keep doing that. We can add folders that way. But if we select, so it's kind of highlighted, and we go back up there again, you'll see that now you have the option of adding subfolders. So I'm going to go ahead and keep all of my photos within that photo folder. But what I'd like to do is I'd like to separate and add these to their own individual photos. So I've got several different things going on here. So what I'm going to first do is just select all the photos of my first model here, and I'm going to go ahead and click on that, add subfolder, and I'm going to name this Clara. And you'll notice here that you have the option that you can include the selected folder, the photos, and I did select those photos ahead of time, so I'm going to go ahead and click that, and now I'm going to hit create. Now if you look over here, anytime in Lightroom where you see these little triangles, if they're pointing inward, that means that they can be opened up by just clicking on the triangle, and you'll notice now that that folder Clara is there, and those 16 photos here at the top have been moved into that folder. Okay, so another way you can do it, let's say you don't have the photos selected ahead of time, we can create another subfolder here, and we're just going to call this one Sam, and uncheck that because I don't want to accidentally put that photo in there, and then we'll hit create. So now we've created a folder that doesn't have any photos in it. Not a problem. Now I can go ahead and select these photos of Sam just like that, and then drag and drop those right into that folder, and you'll see that it moves them right in. So another way that you can add a folder is you don't have to click on the plus. You can actually go down here onto the photos, and you can right click on that and drop down this menu and then create a folder inside photos, which is essentially a subfolder. And then this one we'll just do Clara 2. We'll create that, and we'll go ahead and select all these and drag them in there just like that. So again, there's multiple ways that you can do this. Go ahead and do the, like, you can select them ahead of time. And this will be Danny. And then we'll create that. This photo right here is a photo of Clara. It wasn't in my initial selections, so I'm just going to go ahead and drag that one into my Clara folder. And then there's just some photos of a bridge there at the end, so I'm just going to go ahead and add another subfolder here. And we'll call this, helps if you click inside of the type window. We're going to call these SAA sample photos. And then we'll create that, select those, and then drag them in and drop them just like that. Okay, so what I've done now is I've organized all these photos into their own folder, and you'll notice that if I click on the main folder, it's going to show me everything that's in there. It's just like the catalog. If I click on the catalog and view all photos, kind of the same thing's going on here. So what I want to do is show you that, you know, we moved all of this stuff within the Lightroom, and that's very important to do. Once you set up your catalog, you want to make sure that if you want to change something, so you want to make sure that you change it inside of Lightroom. You don't want to change it in, say, the folder view up here. So you'll notice now if I back up, we have our photos folder, and if we open that, you'll see that Lightroom actually physically moved those files on my hard drive into these particular folders. Okay, but let's say on accident we decided to change the name of this folder. So we end up typing Samantha. Actually, we did not type that. Okay, we end up typing Samantha in there and we hit enter. Now when we go back to our Lightroom, you'll see that there's a question mark there. It no longer knows where those photos are. If you accidentally do that, and you'll see here there's photo is missing icons up here. Lightroom no longer knows where it is to work on it. If you make that mistake, just right click on that file, find missing folder, and then you'll have to work your way back to where you're keeping everything, and then just go ahead and click on that Samantha folder, and then Lightroom will change it. So if you want to change the name of a file, you want to make sure that you select it in Lightroom, right click, and then rename, and then we can call that Sam and hit save. And then we'll see that when we go back to our folder view, Lightroom has changed the name of the folder. So that's just something I wanted to point out. It's very important that anytime you do any kind of moving or editing of where the files are, you want to do it from within Lightroom itself, and otherwise you'll make it so Lightroom can no longer find those folders. Okay, so there we have it. That's pretty much where I wanted to go with this first tutorial. Like I said, this is a tutorial for the Springfield Art Association photography class. There are going to be many more tutorials to come. This is just basically getting you through the setup of Lightroom and talking a little bit about the library module. In our next video, we'll go ahead and open up the develop module, and we'll talk about how we can actually edit some of these photos.